Welcome back to our Citizenship and Global Awareness Nuclear Paradox unit. In this section, you are going to be learning about the theories of international relations and global politics and how do we look at the nuclear paradox. When we look at what a theoretical approach is, theories are key to organize our thoughts about world events and the complexities of how these events interact with one another. Also, theories show us how to identify individual issues and possibly show different ways to solve those problems. Theories are going to allow us to look at patterns, to help us look at the past, and to also predict the future. Again, our case study is to understand theories and how should the United States pursue energy production as an energy solution, but yet deter the world from getting in greater conflict due to nuclear weapons. We're going to do so by looking at how do all of these theories look at and examine how actors are going to collaborate with one another to create peace through power or collaboration. That is going to be a theme that is shown. So let's start with the first one, realism. Realism, in my opinion, is one of the easiest to understand. Realism is a theoretical approach where the most powerful and the most dominant will succeed in the world because they will be the deterrent. No one else will rise up against that country or non-recognized state. So international politics, again, is about the exercising power by states. That's what realism says. It's about the distribution of power that determines what really a state can do. Humans are completely motivated by power to rule others. The distribution of power is always that cause of war and peace. Who has the most weapons? Who doesn't have the most weapons? If you start feeling threatened by others, you'll create more weapons to get more certainty. So international politics, according to realism, it's like beyond morality. It's not about right or wrong. It's about who has more power that is going to create that conflict. Realism focuses on the problems of international conflict, wars in particular. So when we examine realism more, there's a primary motivation of a state to just survive, and they're gonna really be self-sufficient to survive. So if you ever feel insecure, it's going to lead to a state trying to arm themselves. This can lead to an arms race, like we saw in the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States of America. And it also leads to a thing called the game theory. And in this game theory, you're always going to sit back and judge and look at your competitors and try to understand what are their motives. And in many instances in game theory, you are very subject to feeling that that opponent is going to do the worst thing possible. And there's a zero sum theory to it, meaning there's going to be one loser and there is going to be one winner. So there are four main assumptions in realism. Number one, there is anarchy. There's no world central ruler. Number two, states are the central actor. State governments run all these worldwide organizations. They will not focus on NGOs. They will not focus on IGOs because those are just small groups that are created by states or by non-state actors. Therefore, they are not the ones that hold the nuclear weapons or the tanks or the guns. States are the unitary actor, is number three. There's a state-centered view. So it's always like Russia did this, the United States did this, China did this. However, there are portions of that government and part of that society that don't agree with that. So it's really not the whole state in itself. They also see state as the rational actors. States have consistent preferences, and that consistent preference is the national interest, wealth, weapons, security, etc. So when you look at those sources of states' power, it's military resources, it's that economic strength, it's that technology. So if you look at the graph, it breaks down the amount of nuclear warheads worldwide. You will notice that Russia and the United States have a combined 13,780 nuclear warheads in the world. Again, that could blow up our globe multiple times. But why that takes place, according to realism, is whoever has the most weapons is going to be the most dominated power in the world. And if you look at today, the United States economically fears China, but militarily we fear the Russian regime more under the leadership of Putin. So the next slide you'll see from 1517 to 2009, according to the long cycle of global politics and the nation state, a comparative studies in history, there's a hegemonic stability standpoint where one group will always rule during that time period according to realism. So you can see Portugal was the global leader. Then the Netherlands was the global leader. And then Britain. And then Britain again. And then now we're in this time period post-World War II where the United States is the dominant power. People will say that China's competing against us and the Soviets. However, there is always one that leads the way. Now, as we segue onto our second theoretical approach, liberalism is going to be completely different. Liberalism is going to focus on collaboration, and it has a more positive view in regards to trust and trusting not only the diplomats from nation to nation, but also the state as a unitary actor, as France, Britain, Australia, Japan, Russia, China, that we are all trying to do better for our people and try to make our nation states better, and we have to work together. So if you take a look at the polarity in international politics before I go forward, hegemony means that there's one power. So like the United States is running the show, or like we said, Portugal back in the 1500s. Then there's bipolarity, where you have two rivals, like the Soviet Union and the United States, with everybody trickled below. Some would say that we're in somewhat of a tripolarity now, because you have China, you have the Russians, and the United States, with all of our built-in alliances based off economic alliances or maybe even religious alliances. And then you have multipolarity. If anybody was to give a multiple choice question to you about this, they would probably ask you which of the four following is the best replication of liberalism. That would be multipolarity, because we all need to collaborate with one another on every phase, economic, social, and political, to make our world work better today. So liberalism. Liberalism is possible to overcome the worst aspects of this realist world that's a power struggle, because we can economically make each other better. We can socially make each other better by learning about other cultures, other religions, and militarily, if we all can understand a way to create peace from continent to continent and have a greater security good based off deterrence, then we could live peacefully. Liberalism is the prisoner's dilemma. It basically states that everything is not a zero-sum game, that we can all win in certain aspects. There doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. States have an incentive, an ability to overcome this security dilemma, prisoner's dilemma. Like, if we collaborate more with others and make others richer and others safer, then are we not winning too? Because then we don't send troops there. We don't have to send maybe millions and billions of dollars to aid refugees or people starving or people that are unemployed in other areas. So it could be a win-win situation. So there's this idea of reciprocity, which is the practice of exchanging things with others for mutual benefit. That can persuade even selfish states to cooperate, because they're going to see the end-all be-all.